Welcome to Athletes to Entrepreneurs, the Alumni Journey. I'm Rob Finkelstein, founder and CEO of Alumni Direct. We've created a platform to help athletes and other alumni network and connect with each other and tap into various resources in health and career and finance. But more importantly, this podcast, it addresses athletes transition out of sport. It's such a major issue today, loss of identity, different things that athletes face, financial literacy. So we want to make an impact. So we interview former college and professional athletes, and we talk about their journey, their transition out of sports into successful business leadership and entrepreneurship. So excited today to have Nicole Bradley. How you doing, Nicole?
Good. How are you, Rob? Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Doing great, thanks. And so Nicole was played basketball all through high school and other sports and all fired up, went on to Gonzaga, and she'll tell us more about basketball ending, unfortunately for her. However, the competitive spirit in her, she joined the competitive dance team at Gonzaga and had her sports there with that. And then when she was done, she really loved the athlete world. So she was going to go into law, but she decided, I'm going to go into athletics, and which started her career into different types of, she's working in sports marketing agencies. And ultimately today, she is the founder of 8-9 Agency. And she's going to tell us all about that later. So Nicole, let's talk about playing sports growing up. How did that shape you leading up into college?
Rob, honestly, it's not even like I played sports. It was like I grew up in a family where we were sports. It was part of our identity. I mean, from my grandpa, he was drafted by the Rams. He played football. My uncle was a Hall of Fame coach. All my cousins played sports. I mean, a couple sports. So it's just part of who we were. We were athletes, and that's, exactly what it was. So, and even my dad's a cowboy, which is like the roughest, toughest type of athlete around there. Like, are you joking? So it truly was it was ingrained in me. It always has been. It's the mentality at the dinner table. Again, my uncle's a Hall of Fame coach. The gym is named after him and the court's named after him. So you can imagine what family dinners and, sports, events were like. I mean, it was a family affair. So it's truly ingrained in me. It's my DNA.
That's awesome. Yeah. And it's definitely it plays such a major role, obviously, in shaping people. There's so much that we talk about with athletes and the skills and DNA and all that. So obviously you definitely model that. So let's, when you went to Gonzaga, was there programs there? I mean, I know a lot of us, they weren't necessarily there, maybe more so now, but were there programs where there was education about transition out of sport, not just like a one-day workshop, but more so classes on it?
Yeah. Honestly, so when I got to Gonzaga, I didn't play basketball and I was like lost. There was the dance team. It's called the Bomb Squad. And we were going to perform at the boys basketball games. It was incredible. I loved it. But there wasn't necessarily resources for that team at Gonzaga. They have something called GAMP, which is the alumni, and that's incredible. But for me, and again, this was 20 years ago, there just wasn't the resources there for that transition for us in the Bomb Squad. Let's just say that.
Now, were there other programs just across the other sports for basketball at some of the other teams there?
So I worked at the baseball office when I was at Gonzaga, and I want to say there wasn't necessarily a program. Now, they definitely were incredible with connecting athletes and honestly all students with former alumni, but there wasn't necessarily a program. And there definitely, wasn't the financial literacy programs and things like that. And I mean, I think Gonzaga is the greatest university in all the world, but they're just 20 years ago, they didn't have that. It wasn't a conversation yet.
Yeah, and I think that's the case now with a lot of schools, but even now, it still seems like there's a gap there. I think that people, especially not just with the current athletes, but the alumni athletes too. Like I always talk about, like even from a recruiting perspective, is that as a parent and you've got a son that's going to be going to college in several years, when you're looking at schools, if you're looking at, let's say, 5 different schools, all the credentials are the same. However, you know that one school is going to care about your athlete, not only while they're there, but also as an alumni. So they know that when they come back, they can still tap into those resources alma mater. I think that's so important.
I think it's really important. And I love that there is a focus on that now, and it's starting to be part of the conversation. And honestly, professionally, that's one of the biggest things I do. I spoke at the Big Ten Conference Student Athlete Leadership Summit. So all 18 schools, they brought in 100 athletes and taught financial literacy. So it's not only at a team or a university level. I mean, the Big Ten Conference is leading the way. And I mean, it is part of the conversation. It's a huge part. But I'll say this too. I think what people are missing is the conversation's got to start at home. So yeah, the universities, I mean, they're providing resources, But the conversation has to start at home with financial literacy, because that's where you learn how money works, the way we feel about it. So money is
Yeah.
emotion and it's energy, right? And how we grow up. Like I grew up in Montana and it wasn't a bad thing, but it's, hey, we don't talk about money and definitely not at the table, right? But we should. That's where we should be talking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I like that you said that because I think in this, it's a whole family thing too. Sharing and teaching the families. We might get a little bit into NIL, name, image, likeness, and we can talk about it there.
Yeah.
Let's talk about networking, connecting, and talk about the importance of doing it while you're still playing the game.
Well, I'll give you the best example in the world. My first job out of Gonzaga was for a guy on the board of trustees. So, I mean, there's no better way to say it, right? If you are networking and you are making relationships, especially in today's world with social media and LinkedIn, I mean, you've just got to be having those conversations. And the other thing I will say, which I 100% think every athlete should do, is get a mentor doing what you want to do. You want to be an attorney? Go talk to an alumni that is an attorney and actually see what it's like. Because, like me, I was going to be an attorney, wanted to do that. And that's what I did. Gonzaga had this program where you found a mentor that connected you. And honestly, I mean, there was kind of the perfect storm where Coach Mark Few asked me to do this charity event with athletes, said yes, and fell in love. I knew it was me. But also, actually looking at what an attorney does, I started to realize like maybe that's not the exact day to day that I thought. Like it sounded really good. And this little girl from Montana, oh, I'm going to be an attorney. But I think that's important. So I 100% think every athlete needs to be connecting. And honestly, any student needs to be connecting with your alumni, because there's nothing that makes an alumni happier than helping a current student from their alum.
Oh, yeah, no doubt. It's a big part of even alumni director. What we're doing is just, yeah, it's that alumni engagement. And even like think about now, these young athletes, like the time they really start networking, connecting in general too, is even when they're in high school, because they've got their teammates, their parents, they've got coaches, and just encourage. I've had conversations with some of these athletes, and they're still young, freshman, sophomore in college, but like, man, I wish I would have learned that in high school, because you never know where those relationships are going to take you.
Yeah, absolutely. I think everything's starting sooner too. Like, honestly, what I do for a career now too. I used to work with professional athletes, but now it just is 5 years earlier. So it's really imperative. And the people that really capitalize on that and take advantage of that, of the networks, of the education, the financial literacy, the resources available, both, in college and after college. I mean, that's where you really see the benefit.
Yeah, no doubt. Do you see, because dealing with professional athletes, and this is something that's come across in conversations, that there seems to be very siloed within sports where the basketball players are networking with the basketball, football, baseball with baseball. But there seems like there's such an opportunity for cross networking. Now, I realize, seasons are different and all that, but did you see any of that? Or do you see that today where you're seeing athletes across different sports using that, relationship as a fellow athlete to network?
Yeah, it's so interesting you say that. So I ran golf events for 20 years until I transitioned to what I'm doing now. But I would say that is where you would see athletes of all different sports and all different levels, Hall of Famers to rookies. And that was kind of a melting pot on the golf course at events like that where they would have conversations. But there's not really a platform that's connecting all athletes and providing resources for networking, for opportunities, for jobs, for careers, for all of that. At least not that I've seen. It is very siloed. Now, I will say every sport has really awesome alumni networks. And then, of course, most universities do now too. But there's not really an organization that's kind of cross sport, if you will.
Yeah, and I think it's really important. I always encourage that when I see that, and actually even with Alumni Direct, we've tried to do that. We're creating an athlete community center to have the different athletes across different sports to be able to connect with each other.
Yeah, I think it's critical. And here's the thing, like athletes think different, they operate different. Like if you're an athlete, you're always an athlete. And I don't care if you stop playing in high school, college, professional, went on in Hall of Fame. Like athletes just operate different. It was really funny. When I started my career, I would be in a boardroom or meeting or anything, and I could tell within, I mean, under 5 minutes whether I was working with someone who had been an athlete. And I'd always say it because like once I kind of started getting like, oh, I think I know something. And I didn't know what it was, but I knew they operated different. And again, I'm just a young girl in my 20s, like big dreams and a little bit of delusion and starting my own company and all the things, right? But athletes just operate a little bit differently. And so I think that having organizations that focus on that and provide opportunities for them, and honestly, second careers for them as well. That's one of my biggest things right now is creating an army of athletes, is what I say. But we're building a big team of former athletes. And it's powerful and it's amazing. And every athlete misses the locker room. That's what I hear over and over and over again.
Yeah.
They miss the locker room. So having organizations like that, I mean, it's so valuable.
Yeah, and you kind of brought it up in what you're saying there too, is when companies are looking to hire people, talk a little bit about that, like from your own perspective as a running your company, like hiring athletes and what they bring to the table.
So one of the hardest things is when you're an athlete, particularly if you've gone and played professional, right? Your resume doesn't match your skill set and really where you should be at. And that's the problem is like when a company is looking to hire someone, they're reading resumes and now like AI is taking care of a lot of that. So they just don't have the experience that is necessary to get these high level roles. The thing is though, athletes have these incredible skills and they are like legit just built for those roles, but there's that disconnect.
Yeah, and there's got to be ways to kind of bring that together. I totally agree. I mean, I was talking to a couple of people like, oh, I went to career services, when they were still in school, and they said my resume is not good, like you just said, because they didn't have the internships and all that. But I say your resume is being an athlete. What that skills that you bring is
But it takes a really unique company and opportunity to bring them in. There are roles, and actually, like, of course, we're one of them. Like athletes fit really well because it's flexible. They're their own boss. They're all these things, right? And it's the locker room. They want to stand on stages and help other athletes and talk about, the financial roadmap and how to put things together. They want to be a leadership, developer. They want to help and mentor. So standing on a stage, speaking these things, being on social media, going into locker rooms and helping other athletes, like it fits really well. I've seen a lot of athletes too, like go into real estate. So it's hard because every athlete wants to be an entrepreneur. Let's just be honest. Like, I don't know very many athletes are like, I can't wait to have a W-2 and go work for someone that just, sorry, athletes aren't built like that. They're just not. So they struggle. And not only are they going through this identity crisis and, this new career, and then they're thrown into a W-2 position and this 8 to 5 and or 9 to 5, and they're miserable. And honestly, like I think normal people, if you will, are miserable in that world too. But it's hard to find a really good opportunity for an athlete to have his own career after. And that's what I mean. There are opportunities. You just got to have the right person to mentor you and get you there.
Yeah, for sure. So let's talk about alumni engagement. You kind of touched on it a little before, but did you see when you were at Gonzaga, were the sports teams bringing back athletes, and not just for the homecoming games and all that, but more so to kind of mentor and help the current athletes?
Gonzaga does such an absolutely incredible job of this, 100%. They were always coming back. They were at practices. Some of them were going overseas and they would talk about the process and they would bring them in. And Coach Mark Few and his staff and the whole athletic office there, honestly, is just so good. Gonzaga is such a tight-knit alumni network. They absolutely are doing things, and we're doing things 20 years ago and leveraging that too. Just because one person makes it, it's not like, oh, cool, I made it. It's like, hey, I'm bringing all the Gonzaga with me. So that's the one thing I saw over and over again. I mean, when I went into school, Dan Dickel was like the guy who had just graduated. He was the man, and he went and played professional. And he was back at campus all the time and doing podcasts and bringing other players on. And then Adam Morrison started a podcast. And I believe like he was his mentor, kind of getting him there. So definitely at Gonzaga, we saw that.
That's great. Yeah, I think it's so important. And sometimes schools don't necessarily bring back the alumni athletes, and I think more are trying to do that now. I mean, I've seen in schools I've talked, especially some of the smaller schools, trying to reengage their alumni athletes to come back and do more, and not just. But it's a two-way street, obviously. But I think it's important that the school, even if they've had changes in the coaches or the athletic directors, they still should be doing it.
Absolutely. I think it's a big miss for any university that is not. And honestly, you do see it. You see it definitely when they're trying to fundraise and those types of events, is they'll bring the athletes back on, right? Like everyone knows the value. So there is value of having them in the room, but to take it a step further and not just have them, shaking hands and kissing babies, but actually talking to the next generation of athletes, providing opportunities, showing them the roadmap that they took, and whether it's professional sports or then definitely the career after, because it is a unique journey. It's a really interesting journey. And honestly, at Gonzaga, I remember when I got to school and I wasn't an athlete anymore, and I felt lost. And it was like beyond, oh, I'm transitioning to college and it was something. I was like literally identity crisis, and I didn't know what to call it at the time, but I was feeling it for sure. So I started working in the baseball office, and then the dance team I like had to be part of a team. So I think it's, then athletes go through that. And if you've never been an athlete, you don't really understand it. And if you can talk about it all day long, but that's why when I was, started in sports marketing and started working with professional athletes, I watched so many of them and so many of my friends go through that identity crisis. And that's why I do what I do. I'm like, oh, I remember that. I remember that at 19 years old, and I was just a high school athlete, but it doesn't matter. So,
Right.
I mean, I truly believe every athlete goes through that. It just, going into the Hall of Fame. I've seen guys going into the Hall of Fame and still go through that. So if you have your old alumni network from your university, my gosh, it's like a friendly face, just like, hey, I got you. Come on, we're going to do this together.
Yeah, that's great. So I don't know if you got a chance to watch or listen to any of the podcasts. So if you didn't, then here comes the questions, and they're easy, but they're always fun.
I already failed the first part. Here we go. Okay, let's see if I can do
No, no worries. That's good. That means you'll be authentic in your answer. You haven't had a chance to think about it. So
love authenticity.
we're gonna play a little Back to the Future. We're gonna hop in the DeLorean, and we're gonna go back to freshman year at Gonzaga.
Yeah.
If you can go back then, give 10 words or less advice to freshman Nicole.
Just stay the course. Just stay the course. Like, there were so many things changing and this whole new world opening up. And, little girl from Montana, I grew up on a ranch in Montana. And I was so, at that time, Gonzaga was a big city, but just stay the course. I worked my little butt off, and it definitely paid off. And the other thing I would say is take the chances. Throughout my career, definitely, going to Gonzaga was a big chance. Like, take the leap.
That's great. So
Not
you,
way more than
you
10
actually did that in 6 words. That was good. That was good. Sometimes it's funny, Nicole. They're like, okay, it's 1, 2, 3. Like, no, oh no, that's too many. Or no, can I summarize that? That was good. So now, fast forward to senior Nicole. What advice would you give to her?
Take the chance.
And you did.
Right. Over and over. But I was so scared to. You've got to remember, again, like, I grew up in Montana. I'm about ready to go to law school. I had already taken the LSATs, and call my parents. I'm like, I got great news. They're like, what's the great news? I'm not going to go to law school. They're like, what's the great news? I'm like, I'm going to go work in sports with athletes and raise money for charities. And they're like, is that even a job? I'm like, I'm going to make it my life. So yeah, I mean, taking that chance.
Yeah, that's great. All right, so now let's fast forward. So you got into, like you said, you changed paths and got into sports. So talk a little bit about your journey.
Yeah. So graduated from Gonzaga. As I just told you, I was about to go to law school, decided to do a total shift. And honestly, I thank Coach Mark Few in the athletic office all the time, because he totally changed my life. He just asked me to come volunteer for this event. It happened to be a coaches versus cancer event, and it truly changed my life. I saw something. I didn't know that existed. And as soon as I did that night, I went home crying. Like, I was in my car actually crying, like, no, this is what I was meant for. So I knew I wanted to work in sports. I had never been to Chicago and got a job at a sports marketing agency, and it was absolutely incredible. So again, packed up a U-Haul, took the chance, drove to Chicago and worked at a sports agency, and it was incredible. I loved it. Got to work directly with athletes, helping them with endorsements, getting them on ESPN. And of course, I really fell in love with getting them involved in the charity work. And whether it be a different organization like the American Cancer Society or Gateway for Cancer Research, there was a number of them, even helping some of the athletes start their own foundations. But me being me and loving to take chances, I decided at 28 years old, big dreams and a little bit of delusion, and started my own company. So I started 8-9 Agency.
Well, we're gonna come back to that one. We know that's a spoiler. We're coming back on that one. Wait, I failed to ask you the question. I should have led into that before, but you mentioned before about just your transition out of sport, and like you said, I think it's regardless. It was talk a little bit about, I mean, that transition, but also the transition when you were done with the competitive dance team too, because now all of a sudden you're an athlete your whole life, and now sports are over. You're still involved with it, but over from that perspective. Talk about that transition.
You know what? For me, because I was truly going into my purpose and going into my passion, I didn't feel it then. The things that I felt, as 19-year-old Nicole transitioning from a high school basketball player, that was my identity, to nothing, that was hard. That was a big struggle. But by the time I was a senior and I was transitioning out of Gonzaga graduating, I knew with 100% certainty. There wasn't 99% of me that knew. I knew with all of my heart and soul, and definitely all my head, like, this is what I wanted to do. So because I found that while I was at Gonzaga, the transition, it was never hard. In fact, I was so excited. I moved to Chicago without ever being here. Drove a U-Haul 3 days. Like, no, I was in. I was all in.
Yeah, that's great. And I think a lot of times, depending on the sport that you're in, or even the level that some of these athletes are, whether they do have the professional ambitions, um, it just it's going to determine how they see that transition. I mean, if they're preparing for it, like you prepared for it. I was a runner in college. I got hurt. I knew I wasn't going to be an Olympian or professional runner, so like it wasn't that big of a deal. But I certainly see, and obviously you're dealing with professional athletes. You see it there.
I do.
There are some challenges. Talk about, maybe give some words of advice to athletes as they are transitioning out of sport.
Yeah. My biggest thing is, like, you've got to find what you're passionate about, because when there's that involved, and again, for me, my mom had been diagnosed when I was at Gonzaga in college. And then my uncle, who was my basketball coach, passed away from cancer. So when there was an opportunity to go work in sports and raise money for cancer research, like, that was it. I had purpose, I had passion, I had all the things. So for an athlete, like, you've got to figure out beyond sports, which I know is kind of hard because that's all that your focus is, especially if you're playing professional. But you've got to find what makes you happy, what brings you purpose, and then go find a career in that. And that can look like a lot of different things. I mean, have a good mentor, but definitely, like, if you find something that you love, then the transition is going to be easier. But I will say this too, like, you need professionals to help you through that transition. And I mean, that's honestly a large part of what we do. And I absolutely love that part, but you do. And you need other people that were in the locker room that have gone through it. Because now you can talk about it more, right? Like, this struggle is real. This transition is hard. 20 years ago, probably it wasn't talked about as much, but there are so many programs and resources available that it makes it a lot easier. But find anything that you're passionate about, and then go pursue that, and go pursue it with the same energy and all that you did your sport. And it's going to be a lot easier. It's still going to be hard. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's still going to be hard, but the transition is going to be a lot easier.
That's great. And it's talk about, I call them nuggets. Great nuggets there of advice from Nicole, just on that transition out of sports. So now we'll circle back to the whole career part. So when you hit on a little bit before, talk about athletes as entrepreneurs, and what makes them special at that.
I mean, athletes are just built different. And so one of the things I have found, and I see, bringing on athletes, is like, they eat no's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So sales roles or relationship roles, like, they're really, really good at that. So they have these, like, skills that they didn't even know they were developing. But, like, hard to athletes is different. Like, when you're puking, you've just, ran suicides, like, that's hard. So when you get into your career and, you have to make some calls and you're getting no's all day long, like, it's not that hard, right? So to me, I mean, that's where I think athletes really excel, is when there's an opportunity for them to develop relationships, and then just their grit. I mean, athletes have grit that work really, really well in some industries, like ours, honestly.
Yeah. So all right. So now we can talk about 8, 9.
Oh, yeah, love to.
So tell me how it started, and with the name too. Let's where the name came from.
Oh, yeah, that's a good story. So I was at the sports agency and I absolutely loved working there, but I really wanted to focus on that athlete to entrepreneur, and athletes going from, playing to career. And the reason is, as I was at the sports agency, I watched a number of my friends, and honestly, a few of my clients, go through that transition. And again, like, I saw it happening and I felt it. I'm like, oh no, I remember what that was like. So of course, I wanted to help. And I was like, okay, so I want to really focus, like, not active athletes, but as they're transitioning, that's what I want to do. So I went off on my own, started 8, 9 agency, put together this business plan, and a great friend of mine, Marshall Falk, I asked him to look at it. I had my 3-ring binder and all my sheets and all that. He actually, like, read the whole thing, went through it, and was like, this is what you want to do? I'm like, yeah, this is what I want to do. So he said, yeah, and I'll help you and I'll support you. I'll partner with you. So that was, I mean, changed the game for us. But then we started working with a number of different athletes and helping them, whether the transition from athlete to entrepreneur, and then a lot of charity work. So that's what I did for 20 years, but something was missing. And that feeling that I had at Gonzaga and that feeling that the athletes were having, I thought it was just an identity thing. But then what I kind of came to realize, and honestly, it was Marshall who brought it to my attention, it was also a financial thing. So it was like this financial identity crisis as well. Like this new career, did I invest the right way? Am I going to outspend? There was all these questions and all these uncertainties. And Marshall actually brought it to me, a couple of years prior, and he's like, we got to get into this. It's what's really going to help the athlete. I'm like, no, the answer is charity work. Like if they're involved in their charity and they're doing this, like this is it. This is the answer. And he's like, I think we're missing something. And he was right. We were. So now that's, the largest part of what we do. We focus on finance. We help athletes transition from athlete to entrepreneur, both their financial game plan and also helping them have a career after they play.
All right. And so now, is it something that these are players that you represented, or now it's just kind of open format to like, okay, these are athletes transitioning out. I want to start working with them, and they kind of spreading the word.
Yeah. Well, here's the really cool thing. 20 years working with professional athletes, I had some really great relationships and definitely started working with them. But then this whole NIL world opened up, and I was just really well positioned to start to handle some of that. Financial literacy is now at the top of everyone's mind. You mentioned it right in the beginning, whereas, asking about financial literacy programs, and that's what we do. We teach financial literacy. So I always say we take athletes from financial literacy to legacy and take them through the entire framework, build out a financial game plan, put their financial playbook in order. So yeah, we start with financial literacy and the NIL space. Like before we had athletes that were, 20, 23 years old, going into the league, making $1 million contracts. Now it's happening at 18. And financial literacy, it is the foundation of everything. And again, the whole family's got to be involved. So that's really what we focus on now is the financial literacy, working with NIL athletes. And then, yes, of course, I still do work with professional athletes as well, but a large number of our athletes are actually NIL clients now.
Okay. So so are you now with that, are you trying to work with different colleges, or more so again, just on the individual basis?
A little bit of both. So when I spoke last year at that Big Ten Student Athlete Leadership, conference, that was absolutely incredible. It was 100 athletes in a day. And I've met with a lot of them now since then. We are in conversations with a lot of different organizations and teams and actually athletic programs to come in and do the financial literacy. So it's a little bit of both. And actually there's a quarterback coach here in Chicago that is bringing me in because, the sooner you can teach financial literacy and get some of the foundation in place for these athletes and their families, because here's the truth of it. If the family isn't involved in the financial education, they become the biggest threat to that athlete's, like their financial world, right? And they don't mean to. And that's the worst part is like they think they're doing good, but that's why we do the whole family involved too. So yeah,
No,
we have organizations even like my son's quarterback coach. We're doing some stuff with him.
That's great. And now are there workshops that you're doing, you said, or is there curriculum online as well? Like how does all that work?
So I'm building out the curriculum online. Like it's almost ready to launch, but right now there are workshops and webinars, and then a lot of it is one-on-one. So an athlete will reach out to us and we'll do a one-on-one. We'll take them again from financial literacy, help them put a game plan, make sure that they have the right people in place. I always say it's like a roster, right? Your financial roster. And just the same as you have your game plan and have to evaluate your roster, we do the same thing with our finances. With financial literacy, take them through the path, make sure that they have the right people in place. And it's been amazing.
That's awesome. And then is there an app, or is it just on the computer, and how does that work?
There will be. So right now, honestly, the best place to go is my Instagram. I post a ton of different checklists, free resources, education, and I talk about, I don't know, I met with probably 40 of the student athletes after the Big Ten Student Leadership Summit. And a lot of the conversations were the same. A lot of the questions were the same. And I was like, you know what? Access to the information, access to the knowledge, like that can't be the barrier for families. And it was. So I post a ton of stuff on my Instagram. I'm always saying, I'm like, no one's going to say it, but I will. And one of the biggest things was taxes. And the kids didn't know that they got this NIL deal. And I said, well, did you pay your taxes? And we're like, what? How come, like, why is no one saying this? Why is no one teaching you? Let me be that person. So yeah, I post a ton on my social media. We're about to launch. It's going to be a website for athletes to go to. But even right now, I have an online checklist. And again, you can find it on my Instagram, but for families, both, NIL and just sports families in general, because again, the athlete is one thing and we're teaching them, helping them, but the whole family has got to be involved. It can't just be the athlete.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so how you just mentioned Instagram. So what's your Instagram? Like, how can people find you?
Yeah, it's at Coach Nicole Bradley.
All right. That's easy out there. And then
Yeah, right.
what's the website?
Not launched yet. It will be
Not
April.
launched yet.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So coming soon. So first Instagram, and then Nicole's gonna be ready for you to go out to the site as well. And then it is
Already. I'm just waiting for a couple things to be added. I mean, it's
it's
right there.
exciting. It's
It
exciting when you have the website.
it's gonna, what I'm most excited about is helping more people, because the whole thing, it's overwhelming to families, and that transition and just not knowing where to go and not knowing who to trust. That's just, it's something real. So if I can provide frameworks, checklists, like the guidance for families navigating NIL, families navigating their son going to the league and these big deals, not only the athlete, because that's one component, but the whole family has got to be involved, and the whole family, they deserve this information. I want to give
Yep.
it to them.
All right. All right. Everybody get fired up, and Nicole's ready to help. Do
Yeah,
you have a big team?
growing it. I told you I'm building an army of athletes. So we are growing about 10 as
And
of
then
tomorrow.
basically, so they're covering like all over the country.
Yeah. And it's so cool. Honestly, I started posting and I had a couple athletes reach out to me like, hey, I love what you're doing. I want to do it. Someone in hockey, former football player. I have a baseball coach that's, doing what we're doing now. And, the great thing is it's a really good career for former athletes, and they're making good money doing it.
Yeah, that's great. Well, this has been wonderful. You can find us at alumnidirect.com, and you can find the podcast on our YouTube channel, as well as across all the different podcast networks, Spotify, Apple. And we just encourage people, we always say if we can help at least one person, obviously we want to help a lot more people, but every week we just have great information, great nuggets. This week from Nicole, and just encourage people to share this out, and just know that you're not alone. Transitioning out of sport is difficult. Is the identity crisis is one of the big ones. Obviously, financial literacy. Just don't reach out to people. Don't suffer on that. So again,
Yeah.
Nicole, thank you so much.
Yeah, Rob, thank you so much. And I love what you're doing. Keep doing it. Athletes need more resources and more people like you that are putting stuff out there. So keep doing it.
All right, thank you. It's been a pleasure.